Number one, Elon Musk makes a bid, yes, for Twitter. He makes a bid for free speech. But importantly, Elon Musk makes a bid for honesty about the system. Two, the numbers are bad for Joe Biden. Really, really, really bad. Number three, my NBA playoff preview. Who wins the NBA championship? It's the Will Cain Podcast on Fox News Podcast. What's up? And welcome to a new week. As always, I hope you will download, rate, review, subscribe, and leave a comment wherever you get your audio entertainment, Apple, Spotify, or at Fox News Podcast. And most recently, you can watch the Will Cain Podcast on YouTube. It has been a week of pain and promise inside the household Cain. Pain. I was working out this past week, doing things that middle-aged men should not do. I was participating in my CrossFit workout. Always hesitant to tell you my gym routine because I don't want to be the CrossFit guy. But as a middle-aged man, I probably shouldn't be doing box jumps. And yet there I was, 30 inches up and down, until the middle-aged man misses the box. The only thing that made contact on my way down was my right shin. My shin hit a wood box with the full force of my body weight, sending me tumbling to the ground. I have a lifetime set of friends. One of my best friends throughout my life always took my physical injury as the highest form of comedy. I can hear him to this day as I got the speed wobbles and fell off my skateboard or wrecked my bike on Hospital Hill in Sherman, Texas, cackling as I writhed around in pain. There I was, again, in my 40s, on the mat, writhing around in pain, and I could hear my friends' laughter. That is until I heard my CrossFit coach say, "All right, walk it off." If my sons had been there, it would have been a moment of pure karma. I can't tell you how many times I've told them to walk off some raspberry, some almost broken bone, some skateboard incident, some fight with their brother. And there she was telling me to walk it off. I did walk it off. I walked off the pain, or so I thought. As the week's gone on, I don't want to show you, but my leg looks like I've acquired gangrene. Clearly, whatever deep, long scrape along my shins that I saw was just the least of my injury. I don't know if I tore, a dozen capillaries in my shin. I don't know what I did. I don't know if I got a deep bone bruise, but it's all going to my ankle. My ankle from the foot down is purple and black, and not because my ankle is injured, because that's where the blood is flowing. So I'm limping around this week in pain. And then to promise, for the past 10 years of my life, I have been a part of a very special community, a community that I have told you about from time to time. Prior to moving to Texas, my family and I lived in New York City, and my sons went to a charter school whose home base was in Harlem. This charter school invested in soccer. It's why I like soccer to this day. I used to make fun of soccer. Any sport that I thought had the possibility of ending in a 0-0 tie was one worthy of mockery. Not for the past decade. I fell in love with soccer because my son started playing the sport through their charter school. And the idea within this program was that across the world, soccer is a sport of the streets. It's a sport of poverty, but not here in the United States of America. In the U.S., soccer is a sport for the rich. Soccer is a sport for the suburban. The idea was we could bring soccer to the inner city. This charter school, again, based out of Harlem, had branches all across the greater New York City 5 boroughs, Brooklyn, the Bronx, the Upper West Side. And from each of those elementary schools, they would collect kids that showed some talent and bring them together in an academy in middle school on 135th Street in Harlem. It created a very, very special community, a unique community. My sons have played with boys since they were in first grade, whose fathers drive an Uber, who are pursuing the American dream, who are immigrants from Liberia or the Ivory Coast. And those sons have grown up into young men. This past week, I saw promise fulfilled. One of our lifelong friends, one of my son's teammates, made the development academy of the New York Red Bulls. A very big soccer tournament was this past weekend in Dallas, Texas. The Generation Adidas Cubs. Every MLS academy played, as did academies from South America like River Plate in Argentina, or Valencia in Spain, or Manchester United in England. And I got to watch one of these young men, Yakuba Bamba, fulfill not just his dream, but the dream of a program founder from Serbia who saw or had this vision of bringing soccer to the streets, of bringing soccer to Harlem. It was a promise fulfilled of many, many coaches who've invested in many, many kids, and many, many teammates who've supported each other along the way, and many, many families who stood on the sidelines and learned about each other's lives and learned about each other's cultures, who shared what it's like to be from Texas or it's like to be from the Ivory Coast, and who became a family. Yakuba's just the first. There will be other boys from our program, from Success Academy, who make it. I know there are others who will soon join NYCFC or the Red Bulls or another academy. But it was such a moment. I can't tell you how it set aside any potential pain in my leg, because my heart was so full with pride. So much promise, so much positivity, so much good that can be done in this world, and so special to be a part of a community. Story number one. Elon Musk makes a bid for honesty about the system. You know, at this point, we are toying with the idea of whether or not the world is driven by a corrupted culture from the bottom up, or the world is driven by a conspiracy from the top down. I had a conversation with Dave Rubin here on the Will Cain podcast this past week about that exact idea. Do we see a culture corrupted, or do we see a protected elite driving a vision of their future, of the United States of America? We'll mark one up this week for the tinfoil hats. Mark one up this week for the cynics. Elon Musk, about a week after buying a 9% stake in Twitter, made a bid to buy the entire company and take it private. Elon Musk offered $51 a share for Twitter. That's $41.4 billion for the entire company, and it represented a 38% market appreciation over the share price of Twitter before Elon Musk bought his first share in April. It's an 18% increase over the price that factored in Elon Musk's previous investment. It was more than fair market value. It was true shareholder return. And it was roundly poisoned. First, some background. Elon Musk, the Tesla billionaire, has been interested in Twitter for a long time. He has loved Twitter, but like many of us, as he's seen this social media platform and others, Facebook and YouTube, delve into the dystopian world of censorship, Elon Musk has become disenchanted. His answer, though, is not to divorce himself from Twitter, but to impersonate Bruce Wayne, to go and buy that which he once loved, to go and buy that which he hopes to reform. Elon Musk describes himself as a free speech absolutist. He has described his position as free speech is listening to people you dislike say things you dislike. But that is a point of view that seems to have lost fashion. You could almost point to the generational change when that fell out of favor. Generation X once believed in this idea that you could tolerate even the most offensive speech. Something transitioned after Generation X the millennial generation, and that's not to say every millennial, but the millennial generation and Generation Z seem much more interested in safety than they do in freedom. And the response to free speech absolutist Elon Musk potentially buying Twitter has disrupted that safety, the collective freakout, the collective therapy session inside of a safe space was felt across the media landscape, Twitter, and the billionaire class. We saw the blue check marks on Twitter, people like Robert Reich or Max Boot say that Elon Musk represented a threat to democracy. Should he be allowed to buy Twitter and end, quote unquote, content moderation? That's just a modern day euphemism for censorship. Then that would represent a threat to democracy. Journalists from the Washington Post and the New York Times and other esteemed publications all of a sudden had a problem with billionaires owning media companies, despite the fact they work, in almost all cases, for a billionaire. The Washington Post, of course, owned by Amazon's Jeff Bezos. Employees at Twitter called an all-hands-on-deck meeting, threatened to walk out. Couldn't work in an environment where they had to give up control of the lever or the finger on the censorship button. But most importantly, the billionaire class, the board, the elites had to reject this opportunity for profit. The board of Twitter quickly instituted a poison pill. They, within just a couple of days' time, put in a temporary measure that if anyone over 15% tried to buy a larger stake or controlling stake in Twitter, that it would dilute all of the shares within Twitter. And that would mean your shares and my shares, the shareholder of Twitter, whoever it may be, dilute, meaning lessen the value of what you own. This position, this anti-Elon Musk position, I think was best voiced by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, led by its royal family and their bottomless riches of investment funds, put out a tweet saying that they didn't believe Elon Musk's bid represented sufficient return on investment in Twitter. There's no competing bid. There is no stock price. There is no alternative pricing mechanism that said Elon Musk's bid was anything but above fair market value. So what was it that brought journalists and blue check marks and others on the side of Saudi Arabia? Saudi Arabia, the nation that's accused of killing a journalist in Jamal Khashoggi. Saudi Arabia, the nation where it is against the law to be homosexual. It is punishable by death. Saudi Arabia, not exactly the bastion of democracy. How is it the people that say that Florida's bill, led by Governor Ron DeSantis, the Parental Rights and Education bill, that they've dubbed the Don't Say Gay bill, all of a sudden find themselves on the side of Saudi Arabia? How is it the quote-unquote defenders of democracy are all of a sudden on the side of the authoritarian monarchy? How is it that people who would hold themselves out to be the standard bearers of the liberal tradition are the ones most interested in protecting a ruling class whose most animated motivation seems to be censorship? Censorship is what this is all about. There are protected interests in the United States of America, and those protected interests are interested in protecting Twitter. I want you to think about what they were willing to sacrifice. And as a process, let's think about what exactly is the platform of Twitter. It sure as hell isn't about democracy. Defending Twitter from Elon Musk surely isn't about the democratic process. How else could you find yourself on the side of Saudi Arabia? It surely isn't about free speech. That ship has long sailed. We're now clearly in the age of content moderation. But most shockingly, it isn't even about greed. It's not about money. It's not about shareholder value. Whoever and whatever controls, these protected interests, those interests did not include getting rich. Elon Musk offered 38% above April 1st market value. That is real shareholder return. What could be so important in a capitalist system, on the stock exchange, in a market-driven economy, that you'd be disinterested in a 38% return? And the answer is censorship. The answer is control. Twitter's more important than money. So then what is Twitter? If it's not a free speech platform, if it's not a private business that responds to the stimuli of a capitalist economy, if it's not in defense of democracy, if it's not for sale, what is Twitter? It's a thought control platform. A thought control platform that has effectively warped the outcome of elections, that has manipulated your mind, has controlled your bodily autonomy, has told you what you can and cannot say, has told you what you can and cannot read, and by a process has told you what you can and cannot think about masks, about vaccination, about biology, about boys and girls, about trans issues, about election integrity. It has told you what you can and cannot read, and therefore has told you what you can and cannot think. That is more valuable than billions. Elon Musk did make a bid for Twitter this past week, and he did make a bid for free speech. But what he truly did is make a bid for honesty. He forced the platform, he forced Twitter, he forced the system to show its priority. He forced the system to show exactly how protected is the system. Story number 2. The numbers are bad. Really, really, really bad for Joe Biden. And that, my friends, is a direct quote from CNN. A couple of staggering poll numbers have come out about the Biden administration. The overall aggregate approval rating for Joe Biden right now stands at 41%. Donald Trump, at this point in his presidency's approval rating, was 42%, and much was made about it being the lowest approval rating in modern American history to that point in his presidency. And yet here we are today, and Joe Biden has found a lower number. And that lower number has motivated CNN to reveal this is a really, really, really bad number. In fact, if you dig into the numbers, all that's really left for Joe Biden is white women. White, college-educated women. I mean, if you look across the demographics and you look across the breakdown of polling for the Biden administration and for Democrats at large, you can see that he is losing. He is losing his constituency. He is losing America. As it stands today, 26% of Latinos support Joe Biden. That is a staggeringly low number. My co-host on Fox and Friends Weekend, Rachel Campos Duffy, recently spoke to some Texas Hispanic voters, and they talked about the issues that are shifting their votes. And what's fascinating is, while we understand some of the cultural ties to Latinos and conservatism from faith and family, there are issues politically that are swaying that vote. And some of them may surprise you. Yes, of course, the economy votes, or the economy motivates the vote of everyone, black, brown, white, male, and female. And inflation is causing everyone to reconsider how they voted. But it turns out that one of the big animating factors for Latinos is the Second Amendment, is gun control. And that's one the Biden administration has not yet begun to fight. There will be, before the end of this 4 years, a massive push. You can count on it because there is in every Democratic administration a massive push for gun control. Just this past week, Joe Biden brought up, again, an assault weapons ban. He goes down that path like every other path he's pursued to his own demise. He seems to have a perfect instinct for picking how to lose. From the economic issues, like economy, to gun control issues after a nationwide crime spike and record gun purchases and gun ownership, to go after those very same gun owners, many of whom are new gun owners, and say, you're the problem, not the criminals that my Democratic and left-leaning ideological prosecutors across this nation are choosing not to prosecute. So yes, it's economy, yes, it's crime, yes, it's gun control, but it's also, and get this, it's immigration. It's illegal immigration. Donald Trump won numerous districts in Texas that are overwhelmingly Hispanic. Why? Because of illegal immigration. Once you get past the narrative, the name-calling, the slurs, once you get past calling someone a racist, or for that matter, a transphobe, a bigot, a homophobe, whatever, once you get past that ad hominem attack, once you get past that shallowness, once you honestly outgrow that way of making yourself a more virtuous human being, then you can truly start looking at what impacts your world. Real decisions. And it doesn't matter whether or not you're black or brown or white or male or female, you can see the impact of lawlessness. You can see it in San Francisco where everything is behind lock and key. Not just the Old Spice, but the toothpaste. You can see it in Santa Monica where the United States Post Office suspends mail service because it's unsafe. And you can see it along the Texas border where not immigration, but illegal immigration is run rampant. 230 some odd thousand border encounters in the month of March 2022. It's a record. 220 some odd thousand border encounters. That's illegality on an hourly basis. And that is obvious to everyone. And that motivates everyone. 26% approval rating for Joe Biden among Hispanics. 41% for Joe Biden as an overall approval rating. And that is really, really, really bad. Story number 3, my NBA playoff preview. The NBA playoffs have tipped off, and as you can see, I'm ready. I never disguise my feelings. I never disguise my biases. You know where I stand. You know my opinion on my politics, and you know my loyalties when it comes to sports. The Dallas Mavericks have tipped off against the Utah Jazz, and they have done so without Luka Doncic. And that only dents my confidence a little. Here's my NBA playoff preview all the way to the NBA championship. Let's go to the first round in the Western Conference, where it's the Phoenix Suns against the New Orleans Pelicans. The Phoenix Suns are the best team in the NBA. By that I mean the most well-rounded, from start to finish, offensive and defensive, 1 through 8, 9 team in the NBA. And the Phoenix Suns will handle the New Orleans Pelicans, no matter how determined and how good is young Brandon Ingram. I've always been a defender of Brandon Ingram. He's very good. He's doing it now without Zion Williamson. The future is bright for the Pelicans. Once they have Zion and Ingram and McCollum, the future is bright for New Orleans. But the future is now for Phoenix. The 2-7 matchup in the West is the Memphis Grizzlies against the Minnesota Timberwolves. My pick, the Memphis Grizzlies. I have an opinion on what's real and what is not so real for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Karl Anthony Towns, so disappointing. Not real. Too much to prove. Not arrived. The way that Karl Anthony Towns played in the play-in tournament game was so disappointing, fouling out early in the fourth quarter. Karl Anthony Towns has to become someone who lives in the stratosphere of those with whom he's compared. A big man that can shoot the three. You know who they invoke? They invoke Dirk Nowitzki. Long way to go for Cat. But here's what's real. Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards can play. But he can't match the well-rounded nature of the Memphis Grizzlies. We want to talk about Ja Morant, and we should, but the Memphis Grizzlies is a story of Morant and Jaren Jackson and Desmond Bane. The Memphis Grizzlies are the story of a team. And, you know, the story of the NBA playoffs comes down to essentially about 2 or 3 issues. It's this. More often than not, overwhelmingly more often than not in the NBA, the favorite wins the series. Why? Because it's a best of 7 games series. And when you play a format like that, you wring out the statistical ability or probability of an upset. That happens in the NFL where you have parity and you have one and done playoff format. But in Major League Baseball, and even more pronounced in the NBA, the favorite almost always wins. And that's the story for me, at least when it comes to the West. But the story is also about injuries. Will the Dallas Mavericks have Luka Doncic? And when will they have Luka Doncic? Will the Golden State Warriors have Steph Curry? And when will they have Steph Curry? The Warriors, the 3 seed, take on the Nuggets, the 6 seed, and the hottest player in the NBA is Nikola Jokic of the Denver Nuggets. But if Steph Curry plays, and plays enough, the Golden State Warriors should prevail over the Denver Nuggets. If Luka Doncic can play, the Dallas Mavericks should prevail over the Utah Jazz. That's the 4-5 matchup. And even if Luka can't play, Jalen Brunson, and importantly, newly acquired Spencer Dinwiddie, I believe can carry the Mavericks even past the Jazz. If they get half of the series from Luka Doncic, I think the Mavs move on. I'm picking the Mavs and the Warriors, the Grizzlies and the Suns to come out of the West. It's chalk. It's the stats. It's overwhelmingly the favorite wins in the NBA. But when they do not, it's because the underdog has the best player. And in NBA, even though we've watched as it's moved towards this league of parity, a league of not stars, but teams. Best illustrated, I think, by your 2 number 1 seeds, the Phoenix Suns and the Miami Heat. You're going to need a star to overcome that team. The 1 seed Miami Heat in the East take on the Atlanta Hawks. The Heat shoot and the Heat play defense. And that's enough to hold Trae Young at bay. The Hawks, number 8 seed, go down to the number 1 seed Miami Heat. The number 2 seed Boston Celtics take on the number 7 seed Brooklyn Nets. Now, look, the Celtics are a team. They play defense. They have a star in Jason Tatum. They have a co-star in Jaylen Brown. But this is Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving with the Brooklyn Nets. Maybe Ben Simmons, but I have no idea, nor do you, nor does anyone, what that will look like. But Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, this is the kind of stardom that wins championships. This is the kind of stardom that has already won championships. If you're going to beat a team, you need to be injury-free. If you need to beat a team, more often than not, you're going to be the favorite. But if you're going to beat a team, you better have the bigger stars. And the Nets do. I'm taking the number 7 seed Brooklyn Nets and Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving in the opening round series against the Boston Celtics. The 3-6 matchup is the Milwaukee Bucks against the Chicago Bulls. This one is easy. I think it's unanimous. Everyone is picking the Milwaukee Bucks. Chicago Bulls are on their way downhill towards the end of the season, and the Bucks are the Bucks with Giannis. And the 4-5 seed is the next closest matchup to the Celtics and Nets. It's the Philadelphia 76ers taking on the Toronto Raptors. Some of the insider knowledge is to pick the Raptors. But once again, I'm going to revert to stardom on this. I'm going to revert to Joel Embiid. The Raptors have a lot of big, long-arm, tall dudes that can defend and double Joel Embiid. And then that means what? A really scary proposition, actually. Can James Harden deliver in the playoffs? I mean, James Harden in the past has delivered. Just at some point in the playoffs, it comes to an end. But more often than not, after the first round. But the aged, mercurial James Harden, is it enough to take him past the Toronto Raptors? For me, right now, that answer is yes. At least one round. So in the East, I'm taking the Heat, the Nets, the Bucks, and the Sixers. That takes us to the second round. I'm taking you all the way to the championship in the West. It's Phoenix against Dallas and Golden State against Memphis. I will take Golden State with Steph Curry against Memphis. I will take Golden State with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Andre Iguodala and Draymond Green and their young players in Poole and Kuminga. And I will take the Golden State Warriors over the Memphis Grizzlies. And then, if he's healthy, if Luka is playing, I will take the Dallas Mavericks over the Phoenix Suns. I'm getting waving away from the control room. Watch it happen. If you've never watched Luka Doncic play and you're not into the NBA, do yourself this favor. Reward yourself this treat. You're talking about someone who seems to have a joystick for the entire court. Not just his movement, not just his teammates, but the opponents as well. I'm telling you, he's a basketball genius. He manipulates the other team's defense to take himself out so that his teammates are open. He's like compound interest. He makes everybody on the court better. The question is that calf. The question is that leg. I'm not saying it's like my leg, but I'm just saying we have a theme of your lower leg here, along with Dallas Maverick shirts on the Will Cain podcast. I'm just saying if Luka's calf is right, the Dallas Mavericks are right. And they take down the Phoenix Suns. I've been called a homer before, so it's not going to hurt when you now call me a homer. In the East, the Heat versus the Sixers. Look, if Joel Embiid is going to be the best player on a championship-level team, now's the time to start showing it. And I think he does have a running buddy in James Harden that should be able to pick up some scoring burden when he is doubled. It's much better than playing with Ben Simmons. It's hard for me to buy into the Heat. It's hard for me to buy in. I know about team defense, and I know about team shooting. It's hard for me to buy in, and Jimmy Butler is really good. But Jimmy Butler, as the best player on a team that takes down the Kevin Durant's and the Joel Embiid's of the world, I'm taking the Sixers to beat the Heat. And then in the Bucks-Nets matchup, I will stick with Giannis. I will stick with the Bucks. Beyond Kevin Durant and Kyrie, the Nets are not deep. And the Nets are small. When they run into a team with Drew Holiday, who can defend, and Chris Middleton, who is big, and obviously Giannis, who's a 7-foot point guard, point forward, point center, then that's going to be too much for the Nets. Creating conference final matchups of Sixers and Bucks and Warriors and Mavs. It goes like this for me. It's Bucks over Sixers. Giannis is still the reigning king of the court. And showing my objectivity, it is Warriors over Mavericks in the Western Conference Finals. I really have to respect the way that the Warriors rebooted while staying on top. 1 year down, it's like the San Antonio Spurs of the late 90s. 1 year down and you draft Tim Duncan. 1 year down and the Warriors reboot. Wiggins, Poole, to add to the big three. If they're healthy, and the Western Conference Finals will be the if they're healthy caveat, Luka Doncic and Steph Curry. If they're healthy, it is the Golden State Warriors. Your finals, Golden State Warriors versus the Milwaukee Bucks. And once again, your champion will be the Milwaukee Bucks. I don't think the Milwaukee Bucks are head and shoulders the best team in the NBA. I think it's the way this playoff breaks for them. I don't think there is any team in the NBA that's head and shoulders above another team, which will make this playoffs so exciting, make this playoffs be something that we can and should tune in for. I'm excited. I'm a sports fan. I got my gear on. For those of you listening on Apple, Spotify, or Fox News Podcast, I'm wearing a Doncic t-shirt right now. I'm ready to start rooting. I hope you'll be ready for Wednesday. That's when our next episode of the Will Cain Podcast will drop. If you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment. If you are on one of those audio platforms, leave a 5-star review. I'll appreciate it, and I will see you next time.